Welcome to the Age is Irrelevant podcast with your host, Helen Fritsch. Helen is a 60-plus, lifelong competitive athlete, flight attendant, published fitness model, writer, IFBB bodybuilding pro, and certified wine specialist who believes that your age is irrelevant to pursue goals, dreams, and desires. Are you a woman in her 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond who still has a burning desire to pursue a dream or a passion? Are you thinking about starting a new chapter in your life, but you're hesitant, thinking that you might be too old or just don't know where to begin? The Age is Irrelevant podcast is a podcast devoted to women who want to defy the odds, smash barriers, and redefine happiness and success after 40. It's time to make a difference. There is no need to dread blowing out that added birthday candle every year. A new movement is slowly taking momentum, where being over the hill just isn't relevant anymore. Age labels are being thrown out the window, and women are rediscovering the strength within themselves to make a difference, not only within their own lives, but also touching and inspiring the lives of other women. Join Helen as she and her guests discuss all aspects of aging after 40 and how to make the aging process and those twilight years more rewarding, exciting, and fun.
Hello and welcome to the Age is Irrelevant podcast. I'm your host, Helen Fritsch, and this is episode number 123. Now, my guest today is living proof that age is not a limitation, it's an opportunity. At 72 years young, Chris Hobson has accomplished something that most people can only dream about. She is the Guinness World Record holder who has completed an astonishing 125 marathons, all on 7 different continents, including the icy terrain of Antarctica. But her story is so much more than just crossing finish lines. Chris represents courage, perseverance, adventure, and the belief that it's never too late to pursue extraordinary goals. Through decades of running, travel, and personal growth, she has shown our greatest achievements can happen well beyond the years society often labels as our quote-unquote prime. Today we'll talk about her incredible journey from everyday runner to world record holder, what she's learned from thousands of miles on the road, and how she continues to prioritize health, fitness, nutrition, and purpose in her 70s. So whether you're a runner, a fitness enthusiast, or simply someone looking for inspiration to dream bigger in your next chapter, you're going to love this conversation. And here we go. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Hiya. Are you okay?
I'm so happy to have you with me today. So for my listeners, I am talking to 72 years young Chris Hobson. Now, Chris has accomplished something that most people only dream about. She's a Guinness World Record holder who has completed an astonishing 125 marathons on all 7 continents, including the icy terrain of Antarctica. But her story is so much more than just crossing finishing lines. Chris represents courage, perseverance, adventure, and the belief that it's never too late to pursue extraordinary goals. Through decades of running, travel, and personal growth, she has shown that her greatest achievements can happen well beyond the years society often labels as our prime. So whether you're a runner, a fitness enthusiast, or simply just looking for some inspiration to dream bigger in your next chapter, you're going to love this conversation. So again, welcome Chris Hobson to the Age is Irrelevant podcast.
I can't wait to start. I believe you've got a lot of questions. So
I do. So let's just jump right in. So I always like to ask my guests about their childhood. So talk to me about your childhood. Were you athletic growing up?
Oh, no. I'll give you a really blunt example. When I was 14, and we used to always get a school report, and the PE teacher put on my school report that Christine is an utter nuisance in class. So I would do anything to avoid doing anything sporty at all.
Oh, that is so funny. That is so funny. So as you've aged, you did not obviously participate in sports in school then?
No. Well, I mean, we had to, supposedly. But I was very small, and in those days, nothing was sort of child-sized. They were also like if you had what they used to call the horse, a great big box, padded box, and I virtually needed a step ladder to get on it. The games at the time tended to be all netball, and so all the tall girls were great at netball, and I just like almost ran between the legs. I was always the last one to be chosen, and it was always the pretty girls with long hair, that like flick their hair behind them. It used to choose a team, and the one that got me at the end, you just toss them in and go, "Oh, got her again." Because they don't care, do they, at that age? They don't care how horrible they are. So I got quite thick-skinned when I was by the time I'd finished.
And so tell everyone where you were born.
I was born in Burnley, which is Lancashire, in England. But then with quite an interesting childhood, which I don't often talk about, actually, on the podcast. But my parents... my mother's parents, got very friendly with some refugees from the Channel Islands when the Channel Islands were emptied by us during the war. They lived on Alderney, which is the smallest one. And they ended up coming up to Burnley. And I never was sure whether my grandma put them up or they were just friends with them. But after the war in 1945, they went back home. But in 1947, and it never occurred to me actually that was only 2 years after the war, my grandparents went all the way to the Channel Islands, which was like going to a foreign country in those days, on a holiday. And my mum went with them, and I've got pictures of my mum in 1947 there. And when they got back in 1945, there were no floorboards in any of the houses. There were no trees left. There was no shellfish on the shore. There was nothing, because when at the end of the war, they bypassed taking the Channel Islands back and just left the Germans stranded there while they did Europe. And so they were practically starving. And so they'd stripped everything for heating, and they'd taken all the shellfish. It was absolutely devastated with the place. And 2 years later, my grandparents and my mum went there. So my grandparents ended up living there, and then we ended up living there. I think I was, what would I have been, 12 maybe when I went to live there. Oh no, I must have been younger, because I wasn't at secondary school. So I was probably about 8 or 9. I think we left when I was about 12 or 13 to come back. So, and we lived in a Napoleonic fort.
Really?
So, yeah, like a bit of like a castle sort of thing, but not a pretty castle, a working one, all made of brick. Great big place. And we lived there because it was what they called a council house, which was run by the local authority, by the state, and my dad worked for them. And so my home was this castle that was nearly a wreck, but it was wonderful.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
When did running first enter your life?
Oh, right. Well, somewhere in my early 40s, I ran a little bit. It might have even been my late 30s. And my daughter ran with me because I'd had really bad blood pressure. And the doctor said I needed to get some activity in. So I started walking around the block. And my daughter went with me, and she ended up getting fed up. She was 14, I think, at the time, so they'd not much patience. And we ended up there were no lampposts up there, but the equivalent of running a lamppost, walking a lamppost. And she never stopped running, except for 1 year when she had her daughter. But I lasted about 18 months or something, and I kept getting injured all the time. I'm a bit of maybe an A-type personality, so I tried too hard and just wrecked it all. And then my career took over and everything else did, and I really didn't start again until I was due to retire.
Oh, wow. So what kind of career were you into?
I was a teacher originally, just an ordinary a primary school, so the younger children up to 11. I was a teacher there, and then I sort of worked up the ladder, and I ended up being a head teacher. Then I was an executive head across several schools. And then in England, we ended up with an academy change. And that was because I was one of the late baby boomers, and there were no younger people under us. So when it got to management and when we were all starting to retire, they couldn't actually find enough people with real experience. And so they started grouping schools together under like a super head sort of idea.
Right.
And so I had one of the early ones of those. So when I retired, I'd gone from probably a 24/7 job that was, a lot of people would say was stressful, but I loved it. So, and I found it hard to leave.
I was a teacher. I'm a flight attendant right now, but I taught school before I was a flight attendant. And I had the opposite. I went to Catholic school growing up, and then when I went into teaching in the public school system, and I had kids talking back.
A bit of a shock.
I'm like, you're talking back to me? We wouldn't dare talk back to the nuns. I mean, so it was like, it was a whole new world for me.
Yeah.
So I didn't last very long as a teacher, and I regret that. But yeah, no. So anyway, so what inspired you to sign up for your very first marathon?
Well, I didn't know what to do when I retired. And so my daughter suggested that I went to the running club because she was at a running club. And they'd like a beginners improvers group that only did up to like 3 miles, up to 5K. And so she taught me into doing that this summer as I started thinking about retiring but hadn't retired. And I'd been there about 6 months and had done nothing for the club really or anything. I just was a runner. But in those days, they had 5 places for London Marathon, which seems huge now. They get 1. You know, I mean, in those days, it was quite generous. And it was a track and field club, really. So there weren't many people that wanted them. So I ended up, even though I'd only been there six months, I ended up with a London Marathon ticket. And my daughter that year had got championship place, which is sort of the one just below elite. And so she was doing it. Her husband had applied 7 years for London. In those days, if you'd applied for 7 years, you got a buy. You didn't have to apply again. You just got a place. And it was the last year he could take it. So all 3 of us were doing this marathon. And it was my husband's 60th birthday, and I was retiring 2 days before London. So it was a big, big family event sort of thing. And I thought it was going to be my one and only, you know it.
Right.
No, but it wasn't.
So what was your biggest challenge that you faced, like, as a new runner?
I think, well, I'd been, as I say, I'd been running before. And so I decided that I needed to find a way not to get injured. Because I'd said to my daughter that I would retire the following Easter, providing I'd stayed injury-free, because I couldn't think of anything else to spend my time doing when I retired, except for the running. And if I'd wrecked that, then I was in a bit of a pickle sort of thing. And so I was looking for ways not to get injured. And I found Jeff Galloway, which you'll know because of being from the US. And he was my coach until he died a couple of months ago. And he'd been my coach for 12 or 13 years.
Wow.
So it was a bit devastating. I was shocked how upset I was, because I'd only actually physically met him once.
Right.
So it was all online and it was very old school. So we did everything by email. There was no personal touch to it, sort of thing. But that really threw me. But the run walk that he did was like my saving grace, because I didn't get injured, and I did London and I didn't get injured. Didn't do a fast time, but I got through it. And then in the October, my sister decided my daughter decided to do Chester Marathon, and asked if I wanted to join them. There was a group of them going, so I said, "Well, yeah, as long as you wait for me." And so I went and did that. So that was my second one. And then in that race, I saw a woman that had 100 marathon T-shirt on her back. And it was a 100 marathon club. And I didn't even know such a thing existed. And I kept looking at it, thinking, I must find out about this. What a crazy thing for anyone to do. So I caught up with her. We ran for a bit, and she said that somebody was doing their 100th, and they were there to celebrate. And I asked how you got in, and she said, well, you do 100 marathons, but they have to be verified. You can't just run up and down the road. Like you hear these on the television that say they've done 60 marathons in 60 days, but they have done the distance, but they haven't done a race at all. And so anyway, off she went, off I went. And I thought, that's a crazy idea. And then I thought, you were looking for a new stress. So in my second marathon, I decided I'd do 100.
Oh, my gosh.
It seemed a randomly good idea at the time.
Wow. And I was just going to ask you, did you ever imagine that one marathon would turn into 125?
No, not at all. Absolutely not. Because in fact, I've just been doing, putting a TikTok together about the fact that that actually getting physically fit is not just about fitness; it opens doors for you, and particularly in my case. And every time I seem to have thought that I've got where I'm going, another door opens, and you just, I've been, my husband and I ended up being marathon tourists, and we've gone all around the world, and it's great to do it with a purpose, because you meet like-minded people while you're there, and
right.
You meet interesting people that you thought you were doing crazy things, and then realise that you were barely in the foothills of craziness, when you hear that.
Right. So how did the idea of running marathons on all 7 continents come about?
Well, the year after we retired, we went to New Zealand to watch the Cricket World Cup. My husband, that's where he is now. I won't see him till September.
Oh, really?
He'll only be down the road, but I'll be lucky if he's home before bedtime. And then he falls asleep on settee because he's shattered with everything he's done. So between April and September, I'm footloose and fancy free, and I do my own thing, which I quite like, really. And so anyway, we ended up going to New Zealand to watch the Cricket World Cup. And we were going for it was the big retirement holiday. And we were going for 6 or 8 weeks, so we thought at the time. And so, and I just said, I wonder if there's a marathon there. I'd only done 2 at this point. I wonder if there's a marathon there that I could do. And he looked it up. He says, there is one, Mountain to Surf. He says, and it says it's for runners and walkers. So I thought I cracked it, because I thought, well, I'm a slow runner, but if you can walk in it, I'll be fine. No problem at all, this. The only trouble was I didn't know that they're very into race walking in New Zealand.
Oh.
And so it wasn't walking like I thought.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to the park, with your sandwiches sort of walking. And so And I didn't realise till I got to the start line. I was on this bus and these girls were saying, I'm really worried because I'm walking, I might not finish. And I said, oh, you'll be fine, it's a long cut-off, don't worry about it. And I didn't understand why they were so concerned about it until they set the race off and the lead walker passed the first runner because he did it in 4 hours.
Oh my gosh!
so, and at the time, he like went round the first corner like if he was a car, he'd have been on 2 wheels. He had a lean.
Right.
He went round this corner with this lean, and I thought, how stupid can you get? I'll pass him down the road when he doesn't know what he's doing. Well, Blinky did know what he was doing. He was very fast, so.
Wow.
So, but then I got a difficult continent to get because I've got Australasia, or I'm not even sure what they call it nowadays. But I had a continent, and it's an awkward one that you wouldn't get unless you deliberately were going there. So we got home, and my husband said, "Why don't we become marathon tourists?" Now, this is a husband that never runs a foot. Just to make sure he doesn't run a step, but he always says we, and everyone always thinks he's a marathoner, and I'm just the little woman on the side sort of thing. And so we ended up becoming marathon tourists and ticking off continents, and that's how it all started, really.
Wow, that's so cool. And what motivated you to pursue the Guinness Book of World Records?
Well, I didn't, because initially we were looking at me doing Antarctica on King George Island, which is just off that top little bit that sticks up in Antarctica. And I did look up who the oldest person had been there, and she was in her 70s, early 70s at the time, and she'd done incredible stuff, climbed mountains and all sorts. And I thought, well, I haven't got a chance with that, so I just ignored it. But then, because of loads of complications, we tried 3 times to get different cruises, and they were all cancelled for different reasons. And in the end, I got really annoyed in 2022. So I started trying to get to Antarctica in 2017. And in 2022, I'd still not made it. I thought I was going in January 23. And I was pretty certain I was fine because I knew the fella that was running it, and he ran loads of adventure races and never let anybody down. But he'd had a minor heart attack in the summer, and so he ended up feeling that he couldn't actually do it. It was too soon after his heart attack, and so that was October, and should have been going in January. So at the end of October, I was in a fit of pique. I wrote to all the providers that I knew that had done stuff in Antarctica, and said, what's the waiting times? Have there any places? Because it used to be 2-year waiting list before COVID, so it was quite a long leading time. And 2 days later, I got an email back from the organizer of the ice marathon. Now, I wasn't going to do the ice marathon because Richard had done all the continents with me, and I wanted him to do Antarctica as well. But the only way for him really to do it, the only financially feasible way, was from these cruise ships that kept getting cancelled. But I was so cross at the time. I had written to the ice marathon as well. And so he got back to me and said, we have a place, but we're going in 3 weeks' time. And I said, oh, well, I said in my head, because I'm sat there looking at this email. If you can get the money together and get plane flights booked, then there is a place for it. Let me know, but I need to know before the end of this week. So I went over to my husband, and he's just sat on settee, completely oblivious to what I'd been up to, and just showed it him. And I thought, I'm not going to say anything. And he sat looking at it, and I said, "What do you think?" And he just blinked, and he said, "Go for it." And so I went for it. But I didn't know, and it was only because they'd had the break with COVID that I was old enough. Because if I'd have done that, the race itself has got a Guinness record for being the nearest to the South Pole. So all the other records go on the back of that. And so that was a good start for straight off. But the woman who had it before me, Susan Reagan, who's an American billionaire, she had got it, I think it was in 2019. And she's slightly older than me. And so, but by the time it got to 2022, I was older than what she was when she did it.
Oh, okay.
Because there'd been like 3 years in between. I caught her up and passed her slightly. And so when we were down in Punta Arenas in South America, my sister got in touch with me and said, "Do you realise there's a Guinness World Record up for grabs?" I said, "Oh, no. And I told all the stuff that I'd looked at before. I said, "No, I researched that and there's no chance." And she said, "Yes, there is, because it's got its own world record and blah, blah, blah. And it's on the mainland, not on an island, just on the plate sort of thing." And so I ended up talking to the organisers and said, "How old was Susan and what have you?" And he says, "Your sister's right." He said, "Just make sure you don't fall. You've got to finish." Finish, that's all you need to do. So I did.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I went to Antarctica last year on a 10-day cruise.
Yeah, which is what we were going on originally, that sort of idea.
It was spectacular. So the thought of you, just knowing the topography down there and everything, it's just like, wow. That's unbelievable. I was just going to ask you also too, which continent was the most difficult for you to compete on? Was it Antarctica?
Well, that was the hardest to get on, but I wouldn't say it was my hardest race. When I say that, I don't know whether because she's so hyped up because it's of what we were doing. It's so out of normal realms, and because I'd done it at 3 weeks' notice, it was all a bit ooh sort of thing. But I would say the hardest one was Asia, and that was because I did Tel Aviv for Asia.
Oh.
And this was long before all this trouble came up, and it's again a bit like with King George Island being on the plate but not on the mainland. Tel Aviv is on the Asian plate, but really it's almost Europe. It straddles Europe. One side of Istanbul's in Europe and the other side is in Asia. And so anyway, we got back from that, and he said, "I think you doing Tel Aviv," which I don't know why I said Istanbul, because I always wanted to do Istanbul. I was actually in Tel Aviv. Anyway, in Tel Aviv, he reckoned, he just said to me, he just sat there and he just said, "I think you cheated in that race." I said, "What do you mean I cheated in that race?" He said, "You did." He says, "Because you can hardly count it as Asia, can you?" He says, "Because really, it's a European country that's just on edge of Asia sort of thing. Far more European than it is Asian." And I said, "Well, it's on the plate, it counts." And he says, "No, I think you should do a proper one. I've been having a look." And I said, "So what have you been having a look at?" "Singapore." I said, do you realise how hot it is in Singapore? Oh, yeah, yeah. No, you'll be fine. I'm sure you'll be fine. So I ended up doing Singapore. And that was, they were trying to get themselves as to be one of the majors, and they wanted to be the only major. This was the tale that was going round. The only major that was a night race. And that particular year, they were starting at 6 o'clock as the sun went down. And running into the night. But what they hadn't really taken into account was that humidity is at its highest just after the sun's gone down.
Oh.
And so it was horrendous. By 10K, so that's 6 miles, by 10K, it was like a war zone. There were all these fit, young-looking Asian blokes, because there weren't many women in it. It were mainly fellas. But there were all these fit, all rolling around on the floor everywhere with cramp.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm talking, 6 miles in, and there were probably 20 of them on the floor. And I thought, oh, hell. And they had gone out like bats out of hell from start line. There were a load of them that I don't think really had ever done a marathon before, and they certainly weren't being cautious at all. So I thought, I'm going to have to be careful with this. So I got to about 12K, and I could feel my legs starting to tighten up. And so I thought, I'm not going to end up like them, because all the way, there were 3,000 people did not finish that race, because it was that, and they were all laid all over the place on the floor in the middle of the night. It was just crazy. And I saw the tail bus, in a race, they used to have a double-decker or a big coach bus to pick up stragglers. Oh. And I saw it because I was going one way and it was coming down, it was like an out and back, and it was coming down the other way. And it was a minibus. I mean, it must have only taken about 12 people, so I don't know what they thought they were going to do with all these thousands of people. But it just looked like a war zone. It was horrendous. Anyway, I did finish, and I finished with 20. I was 20 minutes less than the cut-off, and there were plenty of people behind me. So, but that was probably the hardest I did, and the most stressful, because I didn't know if I could actually get to the finish by walking in the time frame, because they'd a hard cut off,
Right. So what race can you remember that everything went wrong, and what happened?
Oh, well, the only one really where everything went wrong was my last one, which was my number 126, because I did my comeback race in December, and then got giddy and booked a load of races, because I used to do so many. I wanted to get back to what I was doing before. And I ended up ill in January, and I think I was post-viral. And we'd gone to the Caribbean on a cruise, and neither of us were fit to go, really, but we couldn't cancel. They wouldn't cover the funding for what we got. So I came back, and I don't know, we landed back, I think, on the Tuesday, and on Wednesday morning I went out and ran 26 miles. You know all about jet lag. So right. I ran it on jet lag, post-viral from a chest infection. And then I did another 26 milers before this race. So in the end, when I actually got to the race, I'd completely used myself up, I think. And so I made the 26 mile, the full marathon length, but they're always slightly over distance. It was about a quarter of a mile to go. And I just got really dizzy, and I kept having to sit. I thought I was going to pass out, kept having to sit down. I've never, because I did so many, I'd never used to hit the wall or anything. So it was such a shock, this to me, feeling like that. So I've had to back right off now, and I'm doing lots of short stuff to work back up again, and maybe be a bit more sensible when I go back this time.
How was running your race in Antarctica?
Well, I didn't think it was too bad, but then when I remember, I was looking at some stuff about it last week in my diary, and I was saying about every muscle in my body ached like mad, and it was partly, I suppose, I don't know if there ain't quite as much air or it's just very cold air or whatever, but also it's uneven. So you're having to lift your feet higher. Now I'm a road runner normally, so I skim the ground. So I think I was probably using muscles that I didn't use that much really. So that was really hard. There was a whiteout only for a few minutes in the middle.
Oh,
and they put flags all the way around the course and told you don't go off the course, because if you go off the course, there's crevasses because it's on a glacier. And so you've to stay on the course. And I couldn't see the next flag, so I had a bit of a meltdown for a few minutes then. But I did it, and I was on my own because there were only I can't remember, there were about 49 of us, I think, something like that. Mm-hmm. And we were on a 6-mile loop, so we were all very spread out.
Right.
And so really you were running on your own. And I just stopped at one point to listen to the silence, because the silence, when they say silence in music is a sound, well, I always thought that was a bit weird, but actually it sort of is, because there's no mechanical stuff, there's no background hum of humanity like we have. We're never quiet, are we? In the sort of real world setting. There's no animals, there's no insects, there's no trees wafting about making a noise. It was very calm weather when we were there, so there was no wind noise, and I just stood there, and it was oppressive. Was the silence really that was? If I took anything away from it, it was that. If I'd have been on my own, I think that would have been the bit that would have tipped me over the edge, because I'd feel like nobody would ever find me. Because because it just literally was you could hear nothing, you felt quite unsafe with it, really.
And speaking of that, let's talk about your mindset during these races. I mean, it's because pretty much it's you against you,
Yeah, and it is that, because I ended up deciding to do the 100 because I'd done these 2 races, and it was quite obvious that I was never going to be fast, and I would never do anything that was of any interest, sort of speed-wise. And so I ended up deciding that I would do these 100, but I worked with Jeff on making sure that at the end of each race I was fit to start the next one. And so my peak year, I think I did 34 in my peak year.
Oh my gosh.
It might have been 36. I think it was 34. And I did them in blocks. So I did I ended up going and doing a lot of them in Milton Keynes, which he runs small events for people that marathon regularly. And he does a Saturday and a Sunday. And I started off just going down and doing one of the days. And then I thought, well, it's the train fare, everything else. I might as well do 2 days. And so I ended up doing doubles. About every 5 weeks, I would go down and do a double. And then he did triples, he did quads, and he did 7 in 7s. In fact, when I think about it, one of the hardest races I did was, I think it was 2018, we had what they called the Beast from the East, and we got a real cold airflow from northern Russia. And it was a bit, well, it was unexpected to me. And the other runners hadn't really cottoned on just how bad it was going to be. It was -7, feels like -14 or 15. And none of us had got the clothes right for it. And on the Wednesday, when it was at its worst, I remember standing at the start, and I don't know how I made myself do it. I must have looked pathetic, and someone put their arm around me. And I said, just don't, because any excuse, I would have turned around and done a runner for the hotel, you know. And I finished it. And the rest of the week didn't feel anywhere near as bad then, because it was downhill all the way then. You were like ticking off those last few marathons. So I do think, because I ended up doing all the doubles, a single marathon, which is why it was such a shock this time about really hitting the wall big style, is that I'd never hit the wall. Because in a single marathon, I was only halfway through what I would normally do. Because I'd normally do 52 miles in a weekend, and so 26 wasn't enough to tip me over the edge.
Right.
And with the run walk method, keeping control of it, and the fact that I always ran to be ready for the next one, you know, there was a lot of strategy that went in it.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Let's talk about your training. What does your current weekly fitness routine look like?
Oh, well, it depends when you ask me. At the moment, because I'm coming back, because I've only felt right again since January for about 4 or 5 weeks. I think I really wrecked myself with all those long runs after I'd had whatever I'd had. And so I'm now doing, we decided I was going, because Jeff's right-hand man, Chris Twiggs, has taken me over. So I've only just started with him. And we've decided that I'm going to do a half marathon in August in Milton Keynes, because I know the course and, you know, I know what I'm doing. And then potentially a half marathon in September. But the one at the beginning of August is with a view to surviving it and seeing where I am. And the one in September is with a view to have picked up some pace in between. And then looking again, going to the marathons in the autumn and the winter. So at the moment, my distances are shorter. So I have a 10-miler this weekend, which when I'm training for marathons, I wouldn't really get out of bed for 10 mile. You know, it feels quite short. I go to the running club twice a week, probably do 6 to 7 miles those 2 nights. Then I do either a long run or I do track at the weekend, usually mile repeats. I'm doing 800s at the moment because I'm doing halves. And then I do, I have a personal trainer in the gym because I also power lift.
Oh, good.
And so I have her 2 days a week, but I have her the same days as my running club, so that the DOMS, so, you know, the ache and the tiredness hasn't set in before I go for the run. So usually on a Friday, I'm absolutely wiped because I've done Tuesday and Thursday doubles through, and at the moment, because I'm coming back, I still know I'm doing them. You know, after a while, your body gets used to it. But
you're not only running, but you're doing cross training. You're like lifting weight.
Yeah.
You're really, you know, getting the good spectrum in.
Well, I think as well, I mean, it sort of sums up, I'm just checking the battery on this one. It sums up sort of how I am, that I'm 73 next month.
Oh yeah,
And the normally if what happened to me in March, the beginning of March, that most people would just not go back. They would, but I'm very stubborn. It's I don't know if it's grit, determination, or just pure stubbornness.
What day is your birthday?
13th of July.
Oh, I'm the 18th.
Oh yeah. Oh right. Oh, we're very near then. Yeah.
I'll be 69. So
Oh well, 70. I've given up counting now. I do sometimes when I stop and think about it. I feel like I've got a clock in the back of my head ticking. Particularly like I want to do the North Pole, and time is beginning to feel limited to how easily I'll be able to do the North Pole. Or it took me 5 years to get to do Antarctica, and I'm on year 3, I think, of trying to get to North Pole. So
wow, I didn't even realize they had marathons up there at the North Pole. That's incredible.
yeah, well, it's all complicated with politics and geopolitics and all sorts of the expense and everything. So
Right. What are some of the recovery practices you talked about earlier about being injury free? What are some of the recovery practices that you practice to keep yourself injury free?
Well, I don't stretch in the traditional sense of standing there holding your leg up behind you for however long. I do a lot of mobility stuff to keep my joints, and I do think as you're older, your joints start to seize up if you don't keep them moving. A lot of people with arthritis and all the other things, they think that they stop doing things because it frightens them. But really, what you should be doing is doing stuff. So I do a lot of mobility. I do a lot of. I have a foam roller. I do a lot of foam rolling to keep everything going. But to be honest, normally, apart from that last marathon, the one in December was fine. So I can only think that I wasn't well, and this is my excuse anyway for March. But usually, if I have a bath and I use a tennis ball under my foot, on the plantar sort of thing, I'm good to go again. So it's not. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm good to go to do a race, but I could certainly go to pub and join in with the others. I don't need to lie down in a darkened room or anything. So
Good. And what about your nutrition? How has that evolved over the years?
Oh, I've been through all sorts with my nutrition over the years. All sort of leading in some same direction. But as it is now, what I call my default nutrition, in other words, if I'm at home and I'm cooking, if I'm in control of it, then I'm high protein. I'm fairly low carb. At one time, I went keto, and I actually ran really well on keto. But I did find it's not very sociable. It's quite hard to sort of do with you sociably. Whereas what I do now, I have about 100 grams of carb a day, which are enough that if you're out with people, you can still sort of not go mad, And I did I don't know if in America, the Zoe Project. Did you do the Zoe Project over there?
I'm not familiar with it.
Basically, it's they did. You joined into it, and you had to pay to join in, but they did tests at the beginning for research, and one of them was using a continuous glucose monitor to check your glucose, and they did like a poo test to see what microbes you got and how well you process fats. So, and I ended up coming out of it processing fats well, but not very good on carbs, which was my gut reaction. So over the years, what I'd evolved was what appeared to be what the data was telling them I should be on. So I do that, but I mean, like I said, I was keto at one time, and then I've never been veggie. But when I was younger, I just ate carbs all the time. I mean, I go to work with just a bowl of pasta and sauce, and no protein, nothing. When you think back, it's a wonder your body survives, really. But anyway,
right.
So,
but talk about your diet during a race.
Oh well, that gets a bit messy because. The way I was racing, when I was racing properly and doing a lot of them before COVID, I didn't eat at all in a race. I might have picked a biscuit up if there were one I fancied on the side, but I didn't actually eat anything because I was so used to doing 52 mile in a weekend, my body was used to doing 26 and it wasn't bothered at all. And so I'd go in the pub afterwards and have a big meal. But then I'd look at it and I'd be really hungry and I'd have some. And then I didn't fancy it. I presume that your stomach's still, everything's not quite working right. And so I'd end up eating half of it. And then an hour later I was hungry again, So like with my 7 in 7s, that was quite hard. And one of the reasons that I played around so much with my diet was to try and work out how to cope with when I was a multi-day marathoner, how to cope with that to keep me right. And I never really got to the bottom of that. All I would say is probably that if I'm low carb, I don't end up crashing the same. Whereas this year, I had just started eating normal, as people would say normal, because we'd been on a cruise, and I'd not gone back. We'd been on a cruise when I was poorly, and I didn't feel. I felt sorry for myself, so I just ate all the rubbish that there was. And then I carried on eating the rubbish when I was back. And I think part of it in the race was that it was expecting being fed differently to what I fed it. Because that's what I've been doing for 4 months, sort of thing.
Right. Do you see other runners make like nutritional mistakes during a race, or you talk to other? I'm sure you've made friends along the way too.
Oh well, loads of people end up sick because they have so many gels. Oh. I mean, these gels, they make me rich. I really can't cope with them at all. Which is where I ended up being low carb and not needing food because I couldn't cope. My first marathon, that first London, I had 2 slices of bread made into a jam sandwich and cut it up into quarters in little packets in my pocket. And I had a jam sandwich every 6 miles.
Okay.
It seemed to work. But the only trouble was that I think I'd not really thought about the fact that because, and it was a warm race that year, it was really hard chewing because you've not got much saliva because you're getting dehydrated.
Right.
So, but that was my first attempt at eating real food because the gels made me feel sick. And in the end, I thought I'm just not going to eat on a race and see what happens.
Right. Do you ever have people comment to you on social media or even in person about, you're too old to do this, and when are you going to stop running, or why are you doing this?
I don't think, well, I get a lot of the why, but I don't get much of the I shouldn't be doing it, because I suppose because I've been doing it quite a while. But I do get, certainly on my social media, they're always a bit wowed by what I've done. And it's quite interesting on there, because I started doing stuff for older women, showing them how they could start with exercises that were more related to everyday life. That they didn't need to go in the gym and do all these things that these beautifully dressed people with the lighting all right and all that sort of thing that we're seeing on them. And so I said, they needed a start. They need a starting point. I mean, I think probably if they get going with it, they may go down all sorts of routes. But it's that like first step over the edge, isn't it? That they just can't visualise, because they just think that they should go straight to powerlifting, or straight to to building for a bikini, and they want it in a month. They don't realise just how hard and how long all these things take. So I started doing that with them, and they actually. It was quite funny, really, because my first post at the beginning was all about my marathons and things. And the first one was about Antarctica and my comeback race in December. I did it with my granddaughter. She taught me how to do TikTok doing it. And I got absolutely loads of interest in it. Mm-hmm. But then after that, they know the story and they don't want any more. Yeah. They won't. It's not. It becomes. Yeah. Well, I mean, how many times can you tell the same person your story of Antarctica? You know what I mean? It was a one-day event, and that's it, sort of thing.
That's true. That's true. If you could share a couple of health and wellness tips or lessons for women over, 50, 60, 70, what would they be?
Well, I don't think age matters that much, because I think it's just the starting. On my Instagram and my TikTok, my main range, although all these things look like they're for older people, my main viewers' age is 24 to 45.
Interesting.
And all of them, right across, and across my American ones, across UK ones, all of them are that. And my biggest one is actually 25 to 34. But those two are nearly the same size as each other. And so it's, but I just say, if you start off just walking around the block, but do it every day. It's a consistency people can't get.
Yes, that's true.
And then I said to them, if they're wanting to do some exercise that takes nothing in the house, then I think they will be better in effect doing pre-squat stuff, so sitting and standing from a dining chair, and then sitting and standing from a lower chair, and then from the coffee table. And hope that if they got that far, I think they'd be looking for other stuff, and they'd start doing what we see as lifting and things, because they would start seeing a big difference to themselves. And the other one I do is getting up off the floor. Without hands. Yeah. That's the other one that I suggest to them. But I think a lot with these younger ones, and this is only my theory, is that so many of them are working from home. Do they do that in America the same?
Do they do what?
Working from home.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And, they go they go as far as the kettle and back all day, and that's it.
That's it. Yeah.
They don't do any movement at all. And I do think that generation is starting to panic a bit. And they're feeling it. I was saying to my doctor last week, I went for something, and I was talking to her about these, my Instagram, because it's at 11.3 million is my big one now, views.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's gone absolutely crazy. But anyway, and it's still rising. But anyway, so we ended up talking about that. And I said to her about my theory with these young women, and she says they're already coming through. I said, what do you mean they're already coming through? She says diabetes, arthritis, massively overweight, unhealthy lifestyles, hair falling out,
right?
All the and so it's like a lost generation. Really, it really worries me.
Yeah, same. Yeah, that's same. Well, Chris, it's been wonderful chatting with you. If my listeners want to follow you or reach out to you on social media or any other way, how can they do that?
Well, on my Instagram, I'm Christine Hobson 60. And on TikTok, I'm Christine World Record, because my granddaughter thought that was a good idea at the time.
I love that. All right. Well, you have been a joy and a delight. I love following you.
Yeah.
I'm also a follower of yours also. I love your content. Very inspirational because, people get to a certain age and they just give up. They just...
Yeah. And you don't need to. I mean, it's just, I was thinking yesterday when I was looking at this post that every time I think I've got as far as I can get, you do. Well, you're the same, aren't you? You do a bit more, and it becomes incremental in the end. So you don't see those tiny steps. But actually, when you look back 12 months ago or 5 years ago or whatever, you think, I can't believe what it can do for you. And it doesn't even have to be massive. Well, I suppose we both do quite extreme stuff, but it's not really that extreme for the body. If it was in the 1940s, you'd have been walking as much as I do on a marathon, just going to work and back.
No, that's true. That's true. Did you ever imagine in your wildest dreams that you'd be in your 70s and a TikTok star?
No, no. I still don't quite get it at all, and I mean that's just opening so many doors as well, because I had Katia Jones, which you might not know in America, but she's on Strictly Come Dancing, which is quite big in the UK, and she came for the BBC and filmed at my house, and she kind of adopted me. I mean, she's only in her she's in her 30s now. I'm not sure. Just she might even still be in her 20s, but so a few weeks afterwards, she got invited to a Brooks running shoe store opening, and she couldn't go. And she said, "Well, I think you should have Chris, because she wears Brooks all the time, and she'd make a good ambassador for you." And so they ended up with me there, and people started saying, because between those two times, this post exploded. It was about 1.5 million or something at this point. Oh, and it was like awe and wonder when I got there, and they were talking to me about that I'm an influencer, and the influencers are sitting here, and I'm thinking, influencer? I'm not. Excuse me, I'm not. I've just managed to get a buy and come in by accident. But I keep doing things by accident. So maybe.
I love the fact that we're conversing before we had this conversation, and you were like, "Oh, I was setting up to make a TikTok, and I'm like, I just love that. I think that's amazing. That's great.
Well, my granddaughter taught me she's in Norwich and I'm in Huddersfield, so there's about 400 miles between us. And she got me screen sharing. And I mean, bearing in mind at 72, screen sharing just seems a bit wacky to a 72-year-old.
Right.
She got me screen sharing, and she taught me how to do a TikTok post through screen sharing.
That's amazing.
And I did do her head in a few times because I kept putting my finger on the wrong thing and it'll disappear, and I'd have a major drama,
But they're also good, though. I mean, and it occupies your time, and then you're helping spread inspiration and motivation.
Well, it's actually walked my brain back up a bit, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's not like I'm scrolling. Because I'm creating stuff and I'm editing and I'm writing scripts and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I'm working with AI on that. I get my data together at the end of every fortnight and send it through to chat and talk with chat about what worked and what's not worked. And he picked things out and said, well, you use this phrase on all the 3 that did really well, or you use this phrase on 2 that didn't do well, or and you that analysis you just wouldn't get. It'd take you so long doing it yourself,
right?
To do the analysis. So it's all been quite fascinating. I think I'm working full time again.
That's good. That's good.
For nothing.
Keep up the good work, and I know everybody loves watching you, and I especially love watching you, and you've been a joy and a delight, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm sorry about the power going off.
Yeah, not a problem.
Right, I hope you can splice it better than or whatever the word is.
I'm sure we'll be able to. Take care.
Okay, thanks, Helen. Bye.
I sure hope you enjoyed that interview with Christine. What a delight and such a breath of fresh air. And here are some takeaways that I got out of our conversation. Number 1, your age is not your limitation, your beliefs are. Chris's journey reminds us that extraordinary accomplishments don't have an expiration date. Running 125 marathons on 7 continents in her later years proves that our potential is often far greater than the limits we place on ourselves. Number 2, consistency beats perfection. World records aren't built in a day. They're built through thousands of small decisions repeated over and over again and over time. Chris's success demonstrates that showing up consistently, whether for fitness, health, or personal goals, is what creates remarkable results. Number 3, adventure keeps you young. Chris didn't just run marathons, she embraced the experiences around the world. Her life is a testament to the idea that curiosity, exploration, and a willingness to step outside your comfort zone can keep your spirit vibrant at any age. And number 4, movement is one of the greatest investments in longevity. Through decades of running and healthy living, Chris exemplifies the power of connection between physical activity and quality of life. Her story encourages us to view exercise not as punishment or as obligation, but as a gift that allows us to continue doing the things that we love for years to come. Chris Hobson's life teaches us that the finish line isn't the goal, it's the person we become along the journey. Her story is proof that when we keep moving, we keep growing, and we keep believing in what's possible, and our best chapters may still be ahead of us. Now, if you want to reach out to Chris, you can find her on Instagram at Christine Hobson60. She's also on TikTok at Christine World Record Holder. That is Christine World Record. And you can find me on Instagram at HelenFritch_IFBB Pro, and I'm also on TikTok at that same address, and Facebook at Helen Fritch. And you can email me at helen@ageisirrelevant.com. I sure hope you enjoyed this. And again, thank you so much for being a listener. If you really enjoyed this and you think somebody else might benefit from it, please share. And as always, age truly is irrelevant. Take care. Thank you, and bye-bye.